This week, we're continuing our discussion of the warrants. As we move on to other things and you finish your analysis paper, I wanted to spend a couple of weeks on warrants because they are complicated. We've been talking about them all the time. I'll give you a few more examples. We'll get into some more details, but it's essentially what we've been talking about. So just to remind us, this is coming directly from the article that Toulmin writes to describe his model of argumentation. So the assertion, as Toulmin describes it, is the claim that we've been talking about. That will either be a claim of fact, a claim of value, and a claim of policy. And I want to remind everyone, you can't be all three. There may be appeals to facts or appeal to values, but essentially the author has one claim in the article. If they're asking to change something, then those are claims of policy. If they're asking you to alter a judgment or to provide some sort of aesthetic judgment on something, that's a value. A claim of fact is when that argument can be proved either true or not true by facts. So arguments are supported by datum, which is basically the plural form of data. And the warrant is what connects these two together. So these are Toulmin's words. To present a particular set of data as the basis for some specified conclusion commits us to a certain step. And the question is now one about the nature and justification of this step. The step that he's referring to is the warrant. So when we look at Toulmin, he's saying, okay, you had your assertion, you have your claim, you've supported it, you provided this datum for it. Now, you can't just endlessly provide datum. You can't keep giving facts, listing it. At some point, you have to, for your audience, figure out how do those facts connect to the overall argument. And that is your warrant. So he says, our task is no longer to strengthen the ground on which our argument is constructed, meaning we can't just keep adding facts to that argument, but is rather to show that, taking these data as a starting point, the step to the original claim or conclusion is an appropriate and legitimate one, and that is the warrant. So, and this is from your book, so you can look at this example, but in the upper left-hand corner you have your D, which is data, so C, which is your conclusion or claim, since W, so you can see that connects it together. So if our data is that the developers will build highways, condos, casinos, and nightclubs, this is data. It's something that's true or not true, right? This is what developers will build. The claim that comes from that is that development will bring undesirable changes to life on the Eastern Shore. How do we connect that together? What do we have to believe in order to believe that because they are building this, it will be undesirable? Essentially, we have to believe that a way of life devoted to farming and fishing is superior to a way of life brought on by development, right? If our underlying warrant is that development is a good thing for a community, that it will bring jobs, then we have opposing arguments. And it's not that either of the datum is incorrect. They're both right. Development will bring jobs. But is that what we want, right? And so essentially that's what becomes the warrant, and that's why you can attack people's arguments based on the warrant, right? Essentially, we should all be giving forward good evidence. It's the underlying assumptions beneath that evidence that convince us of articles. So Toulmin suggests that criteria for evaluation of arguments will vary from field to field. In other words, if you're an environmentalist, your warrants are going to be different than if you are pro-business and pro-development, right? Those are different fields. Toulmin defines a discipline or a field by its partial agreement on common goals and conceptions of its purpose. So in other words, you become a part of a field because you have a common set of things you believe to be true. and that you are set upon a particular course of action or goals. So this is an example of how we would look at evidence from the perspective of two different fields. Here's our data. Marge had the right-of-way. 2 witnesses saw the accident. Marge was unconscious. John's speech was slurred. John's walk was uncertain, and his face was flushed. The police required John to take a blood test. Marge was bleeding, and her right leg was twisted. Witnesses estimated John's speed of 50 miles per hour. This is our data. What kind of conclusions could you draw from this data, or what sort of claims? We could say John caused the accident. We could also say Marge was seriously hurt. These are both logical claims from those conclusions, but they are from different disciplines. They're from different fields. If we say John caused the accident, then the field with which we're evaluating the data is the law. If we say Marge was seriously hurt, then we're looking at it in medical terms. Same data, 2 different claims, 2 different fields. So we have different warrants. Warrant. Since an intoxicated driver is generally presumed to be at fault, right? Therefore, we can say John caused the accident because we believe that if you are intoxicated, the accident is going to be your fault. That's a legal presumption, right? It's a legal warrant. If we say the impact of 2,000-pound vehicle will cause injuries, then that is a medical warrant. So depending on the field that you come from, you're going to have different warrants. So as you begin looking at our articles this week, and there's 3, try to see what warrants do you see underlying these articles. What fields or disciplines are the arguers coming from? How are they approaching this argument? Essentially, you'll start to notice in our next theme, we're done with food, all of these articles center around the idea of work-family balance. And a lot of them are responding to Anne-Marie Slaughter's essay, Why Women Can't Have It All. What fields do they come from? And what are the underlying warrants and assumptions of those fields?